You smell the dryness in the air of a cool breeze. The leaves begin to turn, and every classic car owner knows the days are numbered. But the road beckons for one last drive before the inevitability of winter. Answering that siren call is this 1968 American Motors Rebel SST convertible. It saunters along the countryside with ease, the torquey V8 and 3-speed automatic hardly working at 45 miles per hour. With the top down, you hear the glorious noise of the engine filling the fall air with a rhythmic, throaty rumble. There's enough power to drive faster, but there's satisfaction in knowing you don't have to. On a quiet back road, the Rebel heaves a little in the corners, a feeling that's visually exaggerated by the long, flat hood. Overall, though, the engine and chassis are well matched, and being one of the smaller American convertibles of the era makes it an easy car to just jump in and cruise.
One thing that really impresses me about this car is its drivability. Now, the reason for that is the owner has taken very good care of it, but the other part of it is it just isn't that big of a car. It's very well proportioned and thus easy to drive.
Well proportioned describes the styling, too. I think the Rebel's attractiveness lies in its simplicity. Aside from these fender scoops, it doesn't have many visual trinkets or doodads. The Coke bottle shape suggests a hint of athleticism, and details like the car-length chrome strip and triple-stacked taillights gently accent the strong, symmetrical body. SST models came with a power top, and unlike some convertibles, the car's shape remains attractive with it up or down. Under that top, the symmetry continues, with a horizontal gauge cluster, flanked by a clock and climate controls on one side, and AMC's odd vertical radio on the other. Thankfully, I like the color blue, because nearly every surface is some shade of it. But I guess when everybody can see the inside of your car, you're better off with an interior that's bold rather than bland. The plastic and vinyl remain in spectacular shape for their age, and like the exterior, the Rebel's inside draws strength from its simplicity. The car's physical strength comes from a 343 cubic inch V8. That's 5.6 liters, making 235 horsepower and 345 pound-feet of torque. While not an outright muscle car, it's plenty muscular and never left me wanting for more power. If you watched our last episode, you know American Motors Corporation spent the late 50s and early 60s dominating the market for compact, economical cars. Which begs the question, how did they come to build something like this? In 1962, President and CEO George Romney left to pursue politics, and was replaced by a man named Roy Abernethy. A large, cigar-chomping former football player, Abernethy came from AMC's sales department. During the dark days of the mid-50s, he marshaled the dealership troops for Romney's compact car revolution. But now, with Detroit's Big Three invading the compact car segment, Abernethy launched his own offensive, placing new emphasis on size, style, and luxury. Few cars did that better than convertibles. By 1965, the Rambler American, Classic, and Ambassador all offered drop-top models. To further distance new products from the conservative Rambler image, the company began selling certain models under the American Motors brand. For 1967, the Rambler Classic was replaced by the Rambler Rebel, a name originating from performance models of the 1950s. In half a decade, Roy Abernethy had transformed George Romney's line of economical compacts into some of the most elegant and luxurious vehicles AMC had ever built, which would have been great if he hadn't burned through a pile of cash to do it. The company spent millions on constant design changes, and although sales did increase, it didn't cover the cost of his spending spree. American Motors simply lacked the capital and the volume to compete directly with GM, Ford, and Chrysler. By January of 1967, the board of American Motors Corporation ran out of patience, and Roy Abernethy was forced into early retirement. No matter how good the cars were, it didn't matter if the company wasn't profitable. When the cost-cutting began, the American and the Ambassador convertibles disappeared, leaving only the Rebel for 1968. It hung around for one more year, nobody knowing that the 1200 produced would become the last factory-built AMC convertibles ever. American Motors temporarily recovered from those years, but aside from a handful of specialty conversions, the only other soft top they manufactured was a variant of the Renault Alliance. Convertibles are expensive to build, expensive to buy, and not exactly high-volume sellers. You can't enjoy them during winter, and most summer drivers prefer air conditioning anyways. But then comes the middle of October, when the trees explode with color and you get a full weekend of clear 75-degree days. Driving like this fills up your senses, satisfying an automotive longing deep within us. The tragedy is not the end of summer, it's that this glorious transition is entirely too brief.
The last time you take a convertible out before winter is always a bit of a bittersweet moment, because you always feel guilty you didn't enjoy it more when the weather was nice. And I feel like AMC experienced a little bit of that in 1968. The market had changed, the world had changed, and maybe they were sad they didn't enjoy it while they could.
Unlike AMC, we know nice days will return. Next spring, we'll drive our convertibles again and fall back in love once more. Until then, we'll savor these final days of autumn, sweet in their sadness, before we put our classic cars away, if only for a short time. For if winter comes, spring cannot be far behind. We'd like to thank Patrick Foster for images and information used in this video. To learn more about his many excellent automotive books, visit oldmilfordpress.com and be sure to check out Ford Tough, 100 Years of Ford Trucks.
Rebel was less about leather jackets and rock and roll and more about burning draft cards and LSD. So of course AMC had to change the name.